Okay, yeah, I think I would talk about that. Greetings, R. Frederick Riddle here with another episode of Christian News and Views. By the way, this is episode 53. And we're going to be looking today at a news item called Alaska Sues the Biden Administration. And this is out of Reuters brings this to us. And I'm going to read it to you. And then I'm going to make my comments on it. This is something that I had missed as far as if there was any previous articles on this. I don't recall any. But this seems to be an important issue. And so I want to take a little stab at it and make my own comments. I always have some kind of an opinion on it. Sometimes I'm in agreement, sometimes I'm in disagreement, but it all comes from my own Christian and conservative background. So let's take a look at it. According to the article, the U.S. state of Alaska has sued the Biden administration for what it calls violations of a congressional directive to allow oil and gas development in a portion of the federal Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, or you could ANWR, or you could call it ANWR. Monday's lawsuit in the U.S. District Court in Alaska challenges the federal government's December 2024 decision to offer oil and gas drilling leases in an area known as the Coastal Plain with restrictions. Now, when combined with the department's cancellation of leases granted during the days of Donald Trump's presidency, Alaska says it will receive just a fraction of the $1.1 billion the Congressional Budget Office estimated it would get in direct lease-related revenues from energy development in the area. That's a lot of money. The lawsuit is Alaska's latest legal response to the Biden administration's efforts to, and this quotes here, protect the 19.6 million acre or 8 million hectare ANWR for species such as polar bears and caribou. So they're making this a battleground area here, and that's an area where I'm going to focus my attention a little bit. An October 2023 lawsuit by the Alaska Industrial Development and Export Authority contested the administration's decision to cancel the 7 leases it held. Another state lawsuit in July 2024 sought to recover revenue lost as a result. Drilling in the ANWR, the largest national wildlife refuge, was off limits for decades and the subject of fierce political fights between environmentalists and Alaska's political leaders, who have long supported development in the coastal plain. In 2017, Alaska lawmakers secured that opportunity through a provision in a Trump-backed tax cut bill passed by Congress. In the final days of Trump's administration, it issued 9 10-year leases for drilling in ANWR. Under Biden, 2 lease winners withdrew from their holdings in 2022. In September, the Interior Department canceled the 7 issued to the State Industrial Development Body. So here's my opinion on this. The fact that this decision is being made at all by an outgoing president makes it rather suspicious. He has the right to make this decision, but it would seem to be more appropriate for the incoming president, because the incoming president is going to have to live with the decision that is made or reverse that decision. So the question arises, he's just trying to make things more difficult for the next president. Now, they've gotten along as in this transition, and he's done, on the one hand, it's almost the picture that pops into my mind about what's going on with Biden is, on one hand, he's shaking hands with Trump, and with the other hand, he's reaching around and stabbing Trump in the back with a knife. That might be unfair, but that's the picture that crops into my mind, because some of the decisions he is making are ones that are going to impact Trump one way or another, and in a negative way. And so that question comes up. Why is he doing these things? What is his agenda? What is his reasons? And I don't know that anybody knows, other than just cause problems. Now, to me, it is almost criminal to sit on natural resources and make your country dependent upon other companies. This country is blessed with many, not just oil, many natural resources. And to sit on them entirely is almost criminal. On the other hand, we also have a responsibility, a biblical responsibility, I might remind you, toward another natural resource, animal life. And for that matter, plant life and anything in nature. Do these things have to be opposing one another? See, on the surface, these responsibilities, and then, like again, I say, these are biblical responsibilities we have, is to watch over, to regulate, but to make use of these natural resources for mankind. That's why God gave them. He gave them to us for our use. But the question is, do we misuse them? Do we sit on them? What do we do? And I think there's a responsible way of doing this. So, to me, again, this is my opinion, mind you, but on the surface, they are at loggerheads with each other. But in this age of high technology, I think it is not only imperative, but possible to work together for a reasonable and responsible solution that addresses both needs. Now let's look at it. On the one hand, you have the state of Alaska, whose, to my knowledge, its primary and its resource is its natural resources that it can use to bring in funds to take care of its people, to build its economy and things of this nature. On the other hand, you have the environmentalists, if you will, and they have a focus on the natural resources, to preserve them for the animals. And I think that you can go too far in either direction. God didn't give us one responsibility to be used against another responsibility. He gave man a brain, and we don't always use it. Even with all the high technology that we have, we fail to use it to solve these kinds of problems. God gave us a responsibility. He gave Adam, actually, but through Adam, us. He gave us the responsibility to take care of the world we live in. And that means using common sense. It means not digging your heels in, which I think we see this a little bit. We just see people taking sides and they get firm in what they believe. And I'm not saying that their beliefs are 100% wrong, but there's got to be an area where the two sides can come together. If the environmentalists and naturalists and anybody who wants to protect the environment would sit down, or could sit down, or would sit down, and make use of their own, along with the industrialists and economists and those who want to provide for this country's economic strength and to provide for the welfare of the people within our borders, if they could sit down and make use of their own vast resources, mental resources that they have, the ability to think. They have computers who can run at amazing speeds and solve amazing problems. They could use those vast resources to find common ground, to find an area where they can reach a compromise that both sides could live with. The question is, will they? This comes down to pride. I hate to say this, but we all have pride. And there's the right kind of pride, being proud of the achievements, but there's another kind of pride which is far more natural to the human condition, the condition of sin, mind you, and that is we get very proud of things, and we because of our pride, we will not do things. We will not even look at issues. We will not look at a possibility of finding a common ground. I'm not talking about violating some key principles, God-given principles. Now, principles that people develop simply because that's their preference. Those are not the kind of principles I'm saying you should take a stand on. You find, what does the Bible say? What does God say about the nature we live in? And I think it's clear that we as Christians and conservatives are to have a responsible attitude towards the environment we live in. On the other hand, it is equally clear that we are to have a responsible understanding and concern for the economic environment, the lifestyle environment, the environment that we as Americans need to be able to live in and thrive in. An environment will allow us to focus on God rather than on these battles. We get in some silly battles, and when you come right down to it, I think this is something of a silly battle. They are so entrenched and have dug their collective heels into the sand, mud, quicksand, whatever you want to call it. Instead of discussing possibilities, they argue with one another. And no one wins in that situation. No, not even the animals, not even the vegetation or the natural resources. Because why did God give them to us? He gave them to benefit mankind. Now the environmentalists will say, and rightly so, well, the nature, this refuge protects animal life, which actually is something we find pleasure in watching and going and visiting and so forth. But we also, in contrast to that animal life was also a food source for mankind. The plant life is also a food source. And so those two things are in contrast with one another. Industrial environment, we've either been feast or famine. Take the forests. There's the industry, the forest industry that goes in and they cut down trees to create them for wood, so that we can build homes, we can build this and for that. And there was a time in which that industry wiped out entire forests. They stripped it clean. Well, and then the environmentalists fought them, and the two came to either a compromise, or maybe not together, but through legislation, a compromise reached. And that problem has, I think, I could be wrong here, but I think that has been largely taken care of, because the forestry industry has become much more reasonable and responsible in how they go about doing the trees. probably increased their costs a bit, but they became responsible. And so both sides won. On the one hand, the forests are reproducing, which is good for our future generations. And at the same time, those forests, the trees that they are building, those that are trees that have grown and matured and so forth, are being harvested to provide for the current generation. And I think that is a way you can go with this battle up in Alaska. So it does not have to be either the environment or the industry. Get together, sit down, act like grown-ups, and discuss it. Now, I'll be honest with you. The human condition of sin, prideful sin, will make that very difficult. Like I said, they're entrenched. When you get entrenched with things, pride really takes over. And so, because then you, to move from that is almost like you're admitting you're wrong. And so, it's going to call for some diplomacy. And, as a hint perhaps to President-elect Trump, who will soon be president, maybe it's going to call for a presidential kick in the pants. And that's a nice way of saying it. I'm trying to be nice here. But sometimes this is where the president has to get involved. Doesn't mean he has to make a decision one way or the other, but it does mean that he can draw them together and say, look, either get together and work out a compromise and think so, or I am going to take it over and I am going to make a decision, and one of you may not be happy, or both of you may not be happy. Something along that terms. And Trump is the kind of guy who can do that and get away with it. He is, and what was it? He terminated people who didn't do it the right way. Well, I'm not saying he's going to terminate them, but he can take it literally out of their hands. And I don't think that's a good thing to happen, for the government to take things out of your hands. But if you don't sit down at a table and work things out together, that's exactly what you're inviting. So I would encourage both sides to sit down, bring your experts in, bring them all in. Sit down and sit there and set the papers down in front. Maybe have copies made so that each side knows where the other side is standing. Don't hold them real close to your vest like you're in some kind of a debate and you're holding your trump cards. Excuse the play on words there, but you're holding your trump card to your chest. You've got to sit down and work together, not in contrast to one another, but agree that we need a solution, or that you need a solution, and work from there. And I think you could come up with a solution that is livable with. That may not be total for you, one side or the other, but it's one that both sides could live with. And who would benefit from that? The American people. That's who would benefit from that. Well, that's my take on that news for today. I simply want you to, maybe some of you who like to write letters to the legislators and stuff like that, or letters to the president, maybe you might bring some pressure on your political leaders. The political leader, by the way, the article referred to political leaders of Alaska. I mentioned industrialists. Well, so political leaders and industrialists is what it involves. But because this is not just a state issue, this is a national issue. Because Alaska is a major supplier. I don't know who's first and second and third and all that, but we have different states who are producers of oil. Texas, I know, is one. I think Pennsylvania is another one. And there are other states. Which one is number one, I really don't care. But the thing is that they need to be willing to work for a solution that works for everybody. And we're supposed to be adults. We're supposed to be uh, people who have a brain power. In fact, we've got such brain power, we've invented computers which have more brain power than we do, at least since we have the human nature. We have if we're Christians, we have communication this way too. And those of us who are Christians should be praying for a solution, praying that our leaders, whether they're Christian or not, will come up with a usable plan. Now, I don't really want to see the government involved in this. I'm a small government type of guy. But I do believe that it's if they abdicate their responsibilities, the environmentalists, the so-called tree huggers, um, the politicians, the industrialists, and if they all just abdicate their positions and their responsibilities to reach a doable, responsible compromise, then that's going to call for the government to step in. I don't want to see that happen. But if it has to happen to protect America, then they're not giving the government any choice. They're forcing the government to step in. And when we abdicate our responsibilities, that's exactly what happens. I think that and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but in today's episode, but some of the problems we have with the legislature and with Congress and with the government's intrusion into the family is that in many cases, family leaders, fathers and mothers, have abdicated their authority, God-given authority over their own children. And so now the government moves in. If they had been responsible way back when and fought that and insisted on their rights, we wouldn't have to be fighting now to get them back. Now, I'm not a parent, so I'm going to put that right out there. But the thing is this. God gave parents the responsibility, not the government. They don't belong to the government, though the government will say they do. They belong to the parents. And the parents have a God-given responsibility to take care of, to raise them up, to instruct them, to even lead them and make sure that they hear the gospel and get saved. That same scenario that's the same scenario as what we have here. Here we have natural resources at stake. And it's God-given natural resources, and God has given the environmentalists a responsibility, and it's given industrialists a responsibility. Both of these groups have a responsibility. Together, put it this way, together, that's how God wants them. He wants them to work together to protect the environment and to produce, to use that environment, the natural resources, for the benefit of humanity. And in the case of America, for Americans. You can come up with some Bible verses for that. Even in the book of Genesis, God told them to be fruitful and multiply. He also gave them instructions about taking care of what He has given them. It's just a case that we, in our pride, don't like to do that. And so that is something that I just think we need to get together, sit down like individuals, like human beings, like adults, and work things out. That's my thought for today. And I would like to add on here to, if you like this channel, be sure to subscribe using the icon below. By subscribing, you not only ensure that you have access to both my podcasts, that's Christian News and Views, which you're watching right now. It's also the podcast Becoming a Published Author is fun, and it is. But that's the title for that particular podcast. It's where I give advice. I coach you in a way. If you're interested in being an author, I coach you. I teach you. And it's free. And no, I'm not giving you, it's true that I have a course which I sell, and I go in depth on these things. But I'm giving you information you can use now. Much of what I have learned over the years, I did by digging and taking them here and here. I'd watch podcasts, I'd read books, and then I would apply them and learn from them. And that is something that you can do. I'm offering my services to you, and becoming a published author is fun, to grow to be transformed into an author, a published author. But you not only have access to those podcasts, you encourage me. Now, you may not consider that all that important, but I do, because when you encourage me, it encourages me to go further, to do more, to give out more information and stuff of this point. So I will do all. If you will do that part and subscribe, I will do all in my power to create episodes that will inform, encourage, and inspire you. And so that is something that I encourage you to do. Right here down below, just subscribe. That's what I have for today, and I will see you in the next episode.